my classmates in Mr. Porter's 7th and 8th period class, and whoever else is going to see this. I am Shelby Bruno, and instead of doing the slides like the rest of my group, I am going to be doing a video, because videos are easily made anyway. The subject I'm doing, which ties in with the Great Depression, is Jim Crow laws. Jim Crow laws were invented in the early 1900s and went around till 1964. I'll explain that later. The one thing that they were made to do was keep the colored people, which are the blacks and any other people, away from the white-skinned people. These laws were mostly seen out in public by separate water fountains, restaurants, bathrooms, and etc. Many more facilities there are. These laws were enforced in southern states. In the United States, they were enforced very strictly as well. Along with Jim Crow laws made it even really harder for black people to vote. And actually it made any other colored person, anybody who wasn't white, it was very hard for them to vote back then. Jim Crow laws were, like I said, established late 1800s, so actually early 1900s. After the Civil War was over, there was a period called the Reconstruction. During this time of Reconstruction, the federal government had control over all southern states. I think they had control over all states, actually. Once Reconstruction was completed, the states' governments took hold of their states again. They then put Jim Crow laws over the states, so just after slavery was abolished, they could still keep black people not as separate as white people, or not as equal as white people. These, like I said, these laws were created to keep black people apart from white people. These laws were enforced strongly, but different in each southern state, though they also had the same aspects. Black people were not allowed to vote. The way they set up the law was so that they didn't completely ban them from voting, but made it very difficult, especially through their perspective, such as poll taxes, in which you had to pay a fee to vote, or a reading test that people had to take before they could vote. Another way they had prevented black people from voting was the grandfather clauses. This stated that if your ancestors were allowed to vote before the Civil War began, you didn't have to pay a fee or take the reading test. You were just allowed to vote just like that. As time went on, white people became even more and more severe with the Jim Crow laws, treating black people even worse than they had before. This is what drove black people to finally stop and give themselves the rights that they deserved. They then began to make a civil rights movement, led by the one and only Martin Luther King Jr., leading many people to Washington, D.C., and protesting to finally relieve all the Jim Crow laws in southern states of the U.S. in 1964. Now we live in the 21st century. All races can live happily in peace here in America without any trouble. Okay, here and there. Everyone is given the same laws, rules, standards, and public facilities. There's no more segregation or any kind of undiverse problems. The Jim Crow laws in the southern states have been relieved for 51 years now, and won't be set back in place for probably the rest of the time that our free country stands. And there it is, my students here at not Franklin Middle School, just the kids in my class. But I hope you enjoyed, and this is the end of the presentation, and thank you for sitting and watching our probably little thing here, and that is the Great Depression.